Hey, welcome everybody to this week's weekly outreach meeting. Forgot which meeting I'm in. Um, and let's just go ahead and start with our introductions as we normally do. We are being streamed for those that are here. If you care to mute or block your video, you can, but we welcome everybody to join us. My name is Tim Erickson, otherwise known as St. Paul Tim, and I'm coming to you from Deerwood, Minnesota, and just recovering from a really fun and exciting Backdrop Live last week. So, Luke, do you want to go next?
Sure. I am Luke McCormick, ordinarily in San Ramon, California, but currently a passenger in a car, so not driving, on 101 South, headed to LA for the weekend. I'm a technical account manager, and since it's a little awkward, I'll just throw it to, let's say, Greg.
I am Greg, currently in Greece, just joining to see what I can help with, and I'll pass it to Sarvasri.
Okay, my name is Sarvasri. I'm in Walnut Cove, North Carolina, and I'm really new to Backdrop, new to website development generally, although I've played with it for years, but I can't say that I'm experienced enough to be anything but new, beginner. So let's see, let's go to Steve.
Yeah, I'm Steve. I'm in South Yorkshire in the UK. I'm a business director. We look after websites as well as general IT in the surrounding area from where we are. Over to Joseph.
I am Joseph. I'm a backend developer from Las Vegas, Nevada. And yeah, Jen, I think.
Hello, I'm Jen Lampton, joining from Oakland, California. I'm feeling very excited after Backdrop Live, and my last one. Kick it back to Tim. Tim's muted. He's got to find that button. Somewhere there.
My
All right.
mouse suddenly stops working. Yeah, welcome back. Okay, so we have an agenda. I think this week, as I said, the things I mentioned were talking about Backdrop Live. What are the follow-up things that are going to happen? The proposal, I've linked to it in the agenda, is to do some sort of a Drupal 7 upgrade week or Drupal 7 end of life. The idea to tie into the fact that it's 1 year out from the end of Drupal 7's life, and to try and generate some publicity. We did also have a request that we talk about the newsletter, PW Panda. Peter has been doing an excellent job sort of getting our newsletter out on a pretty regular basis, which is a big improvement. We went from like randomly, maybe every 3 months or so, getting a newsletter to pretty much having one every month for, I don't know, about 6 months or so that Peter's been doing that. But he is looking for somebody else to step up and help us with the newsletter. I could probably do it this month. I like doing the newsletter, but I don't want one more thing on my plate. So I'd love to get somebody new doing that. I just was also brainstorming. It occurred to me the jobs board thing that we just sort of started, we might want to touch in on that briefly. I think that sort of best fits into this meeting, the outreach meeting. I don't know that we need to talk about it a lot, but I went ahead and added it to the forums, so it might be good to at least check in. Is there anything else? I did post a link to the notes from Backdrop Live in the agenda, and there is a bunch of, when I was taking the notes, I kind of put some next steps at the end. And so there might be some other topics that came up at Backdrop Live that we could at least mention today.
Tim, can you mention what was the final roundup, like the how many registrations we had? I noticed that we usually the top attendees that we had for sessions was like 25 to 30, but I think that registrations were more than that.
Sure. I'm forgetting the exact amount. I'm pretty sure we were right around 55 registrations, within one or two of that. which is, I think, more than we've had for anyone except the first Backdrop Live. But the first Backdrop Live, I feel like we had a whole bunch of people register just to support us that didn't come at all. And there were some of those this time, but not as many. I think not as many. So I actually think we had more people, or at least as many as we did in the first one, that actually participated.
Yeah, the reason why I'm asking actually is that to identify those that registered and didn't show up, and sort of like if there were issues that caused them to not show up,
Sure.
Then identify those and try to fix things.
Yes. It's a good idea. I'm just, my head jumps right away to implementing it, and how, one, we don't have a clear idea of everybody who showed up. So I couldn't tell you for sure that anybody wasn't there, didn't actually show up.
What I was thinking is maybe a follow-up email to say, did you get a chance to attend? How'd you like it?
Yes. Well, and that's where my mind was going, is that, so to address that specific question alone would be hard, but if we couched it in just a broader survey, I don't think we've done any kind of follow-up survey after any of the previous Backdrop Lives.
Yep.
And if we have the bandwidth, it would be a good idea to do that.
And follow up for transparency reasons, how much did we end up getting from donations?
That would be in Jen's court. I have no idea.
I'll have to check.
Okay, cool.
Yeah, I would like. I would be curious about that as well. We, for those who are unaware, donations are all going through PayPal, and I'm not getting any notification of that. And they're separate from registrations completely at this stage. That's something maybe we could make better in the future. But right now, people independently register and then they independently make a donation afterwards.
Yeah, the donations are optional, and we should mention also that the amounts that we gather go towards our hosting expenses solely.
Well,
And things like newsletter. I mean, there's a bunch of
Exactly.
Yeah, I was just going to say, Gregory, I don't know if it's that clear. We have whatever infrastructure expenses we have.
Yeah, infrastructure. Yeah, not just hosting. That's what I meant. Sorry.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay. So if nobody has anything else to add to the agenda, should we run through those things and go ahead and, I'll just say too, there has been other things that we could talk about, but I don't think we'll have time today. There's been a lot of chatter in the Zulip about outreach in the last 48 hours, including Matthias has been updating us in Zulip about some work he's doing with Google Ads. And I think he's actually running a Google ad right now. And he asked us, I did not realize this was the case. Well, and I don't know if it's tied to his Google ad, but he suggested that we search for Drupal alternatives, see how high back I've heard this before, but I'd forgotten. We have a landing page for Drupal as the best alternative or Backdrop is an alternative for Drupal 7. And I believe that's a page that Matthias made specifically for Google Ads, sort of as a landing page, and for SEO purposes. And if I did a search, I think some people were getting that on the first page of the search, the Backdrop page on that. For me, it was coming near the top of the second page, which seemed to be more typical from what other people, but a whole bunch of us actually all tried that to see what our different results would be. And frankly, the top of the second page is better than I expected. It's not great, but because that's just for the words Drupal alternative, right? That doesn't include Backdrop at all. And yeah, so anyways, that is interesting. And Matthias mentioned in Zulip that he would try to be at an outreach meeting sometime soon, but apparently can't make it today. So let's go on and talk about Backdrop, or Backdrop Live. And well, what if any follow-up business is there? I talk too much. Does anybody else want to start? Oh, hi, Irina.
Hello.
Irina, our meetings are being recorded, and streamed live, so just so you know that. I think the first thing we could talk about is the next date. Somebody had asked that we announce a date before the end of Backdrop Live, and we went ahead and did that as a tentative date. I think Jen picked something out based on sort of our pattern, March 11th and 12th, which I don't have any reason to believe is a problem. I haven't actually looked at my calendar, but I can't, I don't think I have anything scheduled out that far. So I would say this Backdrop Live, we had a little less of a, like, how did it, we had a nice wrap-up session where people sort of talked about how things went a bit, but it was a little less detailed in terms of like what to do different next time. And maybe we could do that today. Is there anybody that, before we schedule a next date, I suppose we should ask the question, is what we're doing working? Do we want to keep up on the same path? I have no objection to that.
Yeah, I think it works well 3 times a year, shortly after one of the minor releases. It works, or a month after. Yeah. Well,
actually, it's sort of right in between right now. It should be about 2 months because the release would be January 15th, and we're doing this March 11th. So it's almost 2 months after. I think our first one was only like a month after, and it was really, kind of hectic because we were all burnt out from the release. So we've kind of scheduled it right in the middle now.
Yeah. So we usually identify some bugs and we prepare for a bug fix release after the minor release. So we don't want to, clog things up for us.
Anyways, so March 11th and 12th, I'm pulling this up on my calendar. Oh, it's already there because Jen put it on it is right the day before daylight savings time starts in the US, if that's relevant, which I don't think it is. Other than we're all going to lose an hour of sleep right after. And a week before St. Patrick's Day.
I was about to mention that we should consider different ethnicities and religions around the world and make sure that we don't collide with major, things like Easter period, things like that, Ramadan. Well,
I'm unaware, nothing that's showing up on my calendar in terms of that, but my calendar wouldn't show all the holidays.
I'm sure we can accommodate for everything, just, major things that will prevent people from, which is an issue that we have with summer holidays, depending on hemisphere.
Well, not hearing any objections, I think we'll continue to work with March 11th and 12th as the dates. The next question I think we should talk about quickly, while Backdrop Live is fresh, is changes to the schedule or the format or anything. Did anybody have any thoughts? Are people still happy with our 3 hours on, 3 hours off thing? Gregory, you were there for Block D. Oh, Steve, of course, as well. Steve, thank you so much for sort of taking primary responsibility for that. That's my biggest concern about our current schedule is I don't like the idea of advertising activity at a time that that people might go out of their way to be there and then not have anything happen, which not the case. We had things happen this time, not very limited, but why don't you tell us a little bit about what happened in Block D? Greg or Steve, either one of you.
So so we didn't have as many people in that block like in Europe, but it wasn't as bad as previous time. I think that we had some slots where no people showed at all, but this time we did have people show up. Going back to the thing that you mentioned originally, I just had an idea because some people mentioned that they would like or they would prefer recorded sessions or formal presentations. And I know that we have an unconference thing, but at some point we had enough people wanting to present or facilitate discussions that we thought for a few blocks to open a third room. And I was thinking that maybe we could have some hybrid, like have 2 rooms, which is unconference, and then have 1 slot per hour for the entire thing, which is scheduled to accommodate for those people that said, hey, we want to know ahead of time. So yeah.
They could also be repeated as well for the American time zones, European time zones, and Asian time zones. So yeah, that's a good idea. Yeah, if they're pre-recorded, of course. Yeah.
In Block D, I actually enjoyed, like, there were a couple of people that showed up, and it was sort of like, even if there weren't specific sessions, would find something to discuss. As in stay in the room and find topics to discuss. So it was good catching up with people in different time zones. So yeah.
So Luke has mentioned in the past an idea of just shifting the whole schedule by 1 hour, which would not make a big difference, but it might make a small difference. I don't know. Does anybody in Europe? I mean, mostly I think for the idea that some folks in the US might actually be able to catch the tail end of that block, because it's almost, if they're early risers. But I don't know if it would help folks in Europe participate at all if it were 1 hour later, or if that would be worse.
I'm not sure,
Anybody?
like, I don't object to it. I would like to see what that will look and what exactly we mean by 1 hour later. But as a general comment, I like to consider myself like sleep deprivation tolerant. And I would appreciate if we had longer breaks though, as in instead of 3 hour, maybe 4 hour breaks, or if not every break being 4 hour break, at least be some of them be longer. So I was trying to fit either resting or getting things done in between the 3 hour sessions. And it seemed like 3 hours weren't enough in some cases.
Does that mean you also want more content in a row? Like, should we do 4 hour, or were you thinking
No,
less
3 hours.
content?
Yeah, my feeling was that 3 hours were good because even people that work during a Saturday or whatever could sort of like find a space for 2 or 3 hours of that. Just give people more chances. But as I said, it was my personal feeling. I don't know if everyone agrees with that. It might be, yeah.
The one downside with that is that it makes time slots hard, because if you have like sessions starting at 9 o'clock on Friday and at 11 o'clock on Saturday, it's just hard for people to remember. Regardless of which time zone. But it is interesting, like we do end early on Saturday. And so I feel like we have extra hours if we want to try it and shift stuff around. But yeah.
Some influence from that idea is that the company that I work for, we used to do trainings, and we have various levels of trainings. The easy one was a full day training on like content administration. And it was like, when it was pre-COVID, it was 1 day. So you would get people in the room. You had 2 coffee or tea breaks, small ones, and then 1 30-minute break for lunch, or 1 hour break in between. But since COVID, and because these are now not being done in person, but rather with like in Zoom sessions, we initially started it as an experimental model to spread it out. Like instead of doing 8 hour day, do 4 2-hour sessions for 4 days. And this is going on for like a year and a half now, and people are finding it much easier to sort of like, my point is that longer sessions get people tired, especially if it's things that they have to digest, and
Sure.
But again, personal feelings.
A couple of thoughts. First of all, Greg, you are probably the single exception of somebody that's like might try to go. Well, okay, it's not true because I have done it as well, but I didn't this time. Okay. The expectation was that no one would be expected to try to go to all the sessions. So like we're not expecting or really encouraging anyone to try to get a 3 hour sleep break. But that doesn't mean that a longer break isn't a good idea. So I'm not opposed to that, but I wouldn't necessarily do it for the reason of giving people a longer sleeping block, because I hope that people are just skipping one of the blocks and getting a full night's sleep. That's,
Yeah,
general.
the reason why I said that is because I
Yeah.
managed to get on every block besides one, but that one that I missed is because I napped, and then I missed one of my favorite sessions, which was the one about presenting favorite modules.
Good.
So I wanted to see Doc Wilmot present TUI, and I missed that.
Yeah.
And I actually missed it by 1 hour. I just overslept. So
Sure,
I don't know.
fair enough.
if you can say that, overslept for 2 days, getting, but yeah.
So, I mean, doing 4 hours on and 4 hours off would keep the schedule regular, but it's also a longer block of sessions, which
Yeah.
it sounds to me like is not what Greg is recommending.
Oh, no,
We did.
I'm not objecting.
Sure.
Not a-
Well, I don't know. I mean, I have mixed feelings. I probably could go 4 hours, but the 3 hour blocks have felt pretty good to me.
Yeah.
In terms of being in sessions. If we staggered, of course, then we'll get Jen's issue, which is that the second day sessions would be starting at different times. If we went 3 hours and 4 hours, the pattern wouldn't stay regular. Right now, the sessions start the same time each day and end at the same time each day. That would also be the case if we followed Luke's, it wouldn't if we followed Luke's recommendation, which is just to make a slightly bigger break for just one of the sessions, right? His proposal was just that we bump that block D to 1 hour later. So there would be 1 4 hour break. Other than that, it would stay 3 hours on, 3 hours off. But on day 2, the starting times would be different if we did that.
Yeah.
If we just did 4 hour breaks and 3 hour sessions, we would either have to extend the event or we would lose slots, right? And Jen pointed out that we have extra time. I mean, it's sort of the first time we did this, we did it for a full 48 hours, and then we shortened it to just over a day, and then it sort of varied in length. And right now we're at about a day and a half. So we could extend it. However, I think my concern is that we would be extending it into like late on Saturday evening, and in a time that wouldn't be good for very many people. So, but I could be wrong. So those are just some of the various factors in terms of changing the schedule. Does anybody else that hasn't spoke
Exactly.
have any thoughts on that?
I was about to say the same thing. Let other people from on this call say what they think.
For me, it was okay. One of the problems in the UK time zone is that when the sessions finish, the last session, we're looking at.
You just
midnight.
talked about
Sorry?
That might have been accidental. Go ahead, Steve.
All right, okay. So the session's finished at sort of Saturday midnight. So it is a long day in the UK. So, but I think the 3 hour slots worked fine for me, and it does allow. If there were 4 hour slots, I would certainly definitely miss a couple of those 1 hour slots due to commitments with family and animals and food and things like that. So trying to fit it in that way. So I think it worked well for me. Obviously, I can't comment on anybody else, but yeah, it was okay. A bit tiring by when midnight approached, but yeah, still a little stoked, and then couldn't get to sleep because you're still wired from the sessions and things, having them rattling around your head. So yeah, that's one of the benefits for being in the American time zone, certainly.
Anyone else want to add anything to this? Well, the only sort of consensus I'm picking up on is that we sort of like the 3 hour blocks of on, that people aren't opposing 4 hour breaks, but I don't know that we don't have a solid solution on how to compensate for that. I'm intrigued by Luke's idea of just the one shift, but I don't know if it's really going to help, and it could add complexity. So
The other thing could be what Steve said, just repeating the sessions, or some of them. But then I guess you might split audience or attendees, number of attendees. I'm not sure if it's a problem, just mentioning it.
I was implying on the recorded sessions. I thought you were talking about having some sessions recorded and playing those recorded sessions back. I was meaning that the recorded sessions could be repeated throughout the full days, so people didn't miss them in the American time zone or UK time zone. So that was just about the recorded sessions, not the live sessions.
I was actually referring to all of them because there might be people that want to discuss a subject and they might miss it. But as I said, splitting the community, I don't know if it's a good thing or a bad thing. Not splitting as in, not having the same people participating in both discussions. Maybe some ideas might be missed unless we take notes from the sort of like first iteration, and then the second one just builds on what was discussed previously or based on the notes.
So I'd like to save time for some of the other discussion. So what I'm hearing from this is some ideas, not a real consensus on any. I'm not hearing any consensus on any change yet. I think we have time yet to consider more, changing the schedule. We don't have to decide that today. But I wanted to hear some feedback while it was still fresh. I think the other big thing that was raised is this idea of recorded sessions. And I think prior to this Backdrop Live, Jen has thrown out the idea that we do fit them in somehow, whether it be like in a block, a specific block for recorded sessions, or a specific, track is another way we could organize it, that one room is always recorded and the others aren't. I have really kind of mixed feelings about this. I went into this Backdrop Live thinking I was liked those suggestions, but during this Backdrop Live, I personally really liked the fact that it wasn't recorded, because I could pop things on my screen that I couldn't do if it was being recorded. I could say things that, it's much less formal, which got, returned me to the thought that maybe I'm all in favor of creating recorded content. And I think we do create a lot of recorded content. So, I think maybe it should just be a different event, but I'm okay with this idea of working it into Backdrop Live in a structured way, because I know a lot of people really want to do that. So, anybody? Yep.
Jen has her hand up.
Oh.
I was just going to say, I really like, I wasn't thinking about it until Steve mentioned it, but I really like the idea of having that main track pre-recorded, because then that can still allow everyone who's attending there real time to speak their mind and show things that they're worried about or whatever, and not worried about being recorded, but then we still can have that main track session. It just does require that we do more work before the event in order to create that content and have it ready to go. I also like the fact that it can be double or triple repeated if necessary. And that could even give us more options for people at any given hour. So like Greg, you mentioned adding a track. We could add like 2 or 3 based on the content we get. And if that content is relevant for like not only this Backdrop Live, but future Backdrop Lives, we could just say, oh, the first session is always going to be intro 2, and we have one on views, one on layouts, and one on whatever, and people can choose. I'm not sure that's the best way to do it, but just it could be an example of a way to manage that. So I think it's definitely worth a try. I'm open to how we want to do it. I like the idea of doing a block. I like the idea of doing a track. I think, just we have gotten a clamor for everyone to have more presentations where they can just sit there and watch. So
yeah, what I wanted to mention is that, so out of the 4 Backdrop Lives now, I've missed one, which was the previous, this one, just out of laziness and summer holidays. But we initially started this idea of not having recorded sessions because of fear that people might not want to go on record when they were doing the discussions. And my understanding from the 3 Backdrop Lives that I've attended is that this is like, I actually pinpointed subjects or things that would be a bit sensitive. And so I like the fact that they're not being recorded. I would like, if there's recordings, to be in a separate sort of like a column or whatever, room, whatever we want to call it, to keep it, clear that, hey, this is being recorded, but the majority of the event is for impromptu discussions, and, come with whatever problem or idea you have in mind, and let's discuss.
Anybody else want to add anything to that topic before we move on? I don't think we're going to decide anything final today. Okay. I mean, my sense coming out of this discussion is that there's support for trying to work more recorded content into Backdrop Live, but not switching it over. So we can talk more about how to make that work as we go forward. Irina, can I call on you? Because I think we're going to move off this topic, and I'm guessing you have opinions on how Backdrop Live went. Is there anything you want to add before we move to a different topic, like for next time?
I think that it went very well. I think that it would be very important to have much more information about this event up front. That most people that I know, they can't make it last minute. People need to know that Backdrop Live will be happening on the certain dates, that they can submit their proposal, that they can participate in discussion. And like for Stanford Camp, we want to have everything, all the preliminary schedule, even though it is unconference style, approximately 3 weeks before the event, because this is when people make decisions where they're going to spend their time. I hope that we would. This is a great opportunity to take Backdrop out of this silo. You know, we're really wonderful, very closely knitted community, which is great. But then if you want, you have to have a lot of users who, you know, use the system. They don't contribute to events. They don't, you know, they don't participate actively. But if the system doesn't have thousands of users, then it's like all inside. So these are my 2 bits. And I think that whatever team that is putting up the event comes up with, that's great. Whether it's 3 hour, 4 hour, I'm happy with either one. It's just, I think it's, people need to know a little bit more upfront. I think it is really important to have this unrecorded sessions where people can comfortably participate, but it's also important to have at least one track where people like, okay, today we're talking about how to do migration. Today we're talking about modules that are missing. Today we're talking about whatever it is. That helps, you know.
Okay, thank you. Well, just in response to that, I'm going to say one thing, which is that we have gotten better on our website. We still have a long ways to go, but we have sort of a registration process in place that sort of works. It could also be improved. But my point being is that last time, in the past, we sort of, part of the getting the registration up has just been, well, at least for me, I've kind of waited for Jen to do it, and this time I didn't. So next time I don't have to do that.
I also think we could open it now.
That's where I was. That's where I was going with this. Is let's just open it up now. So it might be that, as Irina has pointed out, a lot of people aren't going to register until they get more information. But there's no reason to prevent those that are interested in registering, from registering early. So yeah, let's just leave it, get it open right away, and start trying to get some information up. You know, some of the basic information. Does that make sense? Okay. Yeah, because, well, hopefully we're going to get CiviCRM in place soon, which will give us other channels to manage stuff. But if we could get people, if somebody signs up now, we can follow up with them later and remind them. But if they're interested now and they don't register, we don't know that they're interested, and there's no way for them to sort of get on the list. So. Okay. I'd like to move on to at least throw out this other topic, which has gotten some enthusiastic responses. It is in the Backdrop community issue number 14. I'll put it in the Zulip chat here. This is something I threw out as an idea. Actually, I threw it out a few weeks ago, but we didn't have any time to think about it prior to Backdrop Live. And so I resurrected the idea this week, which is that we leverage there was a lot of talk about outreach at Backdrop Live. How do we reach, especially to Drupal 7 users? How do we reach them? And we have a milestone that's really technically maybe happening this weekend, which is, I don't know if Backdrop, it sounds like Backdrop or Drupal 8 is end of life at the end of October. So really this weekend. And if that same thing, basically what I've always heard is November of 2022 is when Drupal 7 is end of life. Well, November, that's a whole, I don't know if it's the beginning of November or the end, but either way, I don't think that matters so much. The idea is it is November and we're coming up on November, and that we might be able to leverage this, hey, it's a year away. It's time to start thinking about it. And if we put kind of a concentrated effort into, say, a week, where we just really try to focus people's attention on Backdrop as an alternative for those who need to upgrade, that we might get some publicity, that we don't normally get when we just sort of scatter our stuff, here and there. And we have some momentum coming off Backdrop Live. So the idea was, to have a week, to have at least, I would say at the minimum, one sort of session that week on how to upgrade your site. I could see even doing more than that. Certainly to try and schedule a series of blog posts. I could try to work on a more structured video. We have video recordings of like live sessions of recording an upgrade, but which are good for some people, but it might be nice to put together that's something a little more structured and detailed. And we could probably get that done and released that week, and just have a bunch of stuff come out that week. We could also, one of the, in my brainstorming mode, I threw out the idea of an upgrade-a-thon, where we took a site and tried to upgrade it for some nonprofit or something, as somewhat of a PR stunt, but also as an opportunity for some of us in the community to get, maybe some folks who've never done an upgrade could volunteer to help with that project and get a chance to actually do the process themselves, like myself. Well, I have actually done an upgrade before, but it's been a while, and I'd like to do another one. Just opening the floor. Any thoughts about this idea, and do we have the energy to do it in a couple of weeks? What would, yes isn't good enough. You need to say yes and, but add something to the idea. What would you do during that week?
I can help only with, I guess, porting modules that are either half ported or they're not in the queue. I'm not sure if we can get complete ports, but we can at the very least start showing people how to use Coder to get most of the way. I know that Jen is a control freak when it comes to that, and she wants to do things like check every little bit of the code, but maybe if we get people to quickly do things, like for instance, removing the help hook is not important. It can stay there or whatever. But I think Coder does that already. So yeah.
For me, I think it would be helpful to define what the primary goal of this week is. And for me, the primary goal is exposure, right? It's not about like getting one site upgraded or having a session. It's about getting exposure. And what can we do in a week, by declaring a week that would help us get exposure, get people's attention that we might not normally get.
Yeah, both exposure and actually showcasing to people how things are not as hard as they think, or how easy it might be to get things done.
So there has to be something different from the stuff that we've normally been doing. So what is it that we would do different that week? And we've done sessions on how to upgrade a site before. So that by itself isn't new. It's combining that with other things.
One thing that was brought up a lot at Backdrop Live was that it was difficult to find modules, especially when the port was in progress. And so it might be a good idea to work on that, to like make it more visible, like, hey, we have all these modules.
Sure. Well, another thing about, go ahead, Jen, go ahead.
I was just gonna say, I created an issue for that while we were in that session, so we should have a to-do list of things we can improve.
one thing that keeps coming up a lot is, and I think the module that Dr. has been working on, figuring out an easy way to get people to get a status of their current D7 sites and how many modules are ported without having to actually go and manually search. I mean, Joseph, that's what you were referring, the actual manual process of going and finding things in b.org, right?
Well, I think there's like 3 different levels of it. So there's, if they look in the installer, we only show things that have an actual release. So we don't show, so it's really, really hard for people who don't know our process to find ports that are in process. And so people will just come and they'll say, oh, field collection isn't ported or display suite isn't ported or whatever their module that's important for them. Even though we might have a 90% done port that we just need someone to test and say, this doesn't break my site before we make a release. So that's kind of one level of it. And then the other, if you have 100 modules you have to look up because you're trying to port your site, then making that easier also. Which there is the backdrop upgrade status module. And I don't know if we have any that documented anywhere or like a blog post. We should have that in our documentation and a blog post if we don't already.
I don't think we do, and that's actually a great point. There should definitely be a blog post on that module. I haven't actually used it yet, so.
I think that's both. There's 2 versions, I think, a backdrop version and a Drupal 7 version. And so you can install the Drupal 7 version and it'll look up all the projects on GitHub and it'll say this module is there and has a release, or this module has a project but not a release, or I think it has 3 different statuses it shows.
Is there a way to reutilize the process where it pulls in the full modules, but instead of doing that, have some form of reutilizing that facility, but for modules that are in process of being ported, where there's no download links or anything like that, but at least it can show that these modules are being ported, the last time it was updated, possibly have a little button that says, I'm interested in this, with a scale of 1 to 5 on urgency. So at least there's some telemetry being generated as to how useful a particular module will be. Is that sort of feasible at all?
So right now, the module already gets like the download links and gives it to you, even if it's in Contrib and not released. So I don't see why we couldn't leverage the existing functionality we have to allow people to install it. Because it's a Drupal 7 module though.
No, I was thinking on Backdrop, the website itself, you can go onto the modules list and it shows you a list of modules. From what I've been led to believe, they get pulled in automatically from GitHub. Can you utilize that?
Those come from
only when there's a release.
backdropcms.org.
Sorry.
Yeah, they don't come from
Yes.
GitHub. Yeah.
Oh, right. Sorry, I thought they got pulled from GitHub. Where I was going was, if you could reutilize that to say, if there's a filter that says only the ones that's been released, then you could do a filter that says the ones that aren't released but are in progress, and then have that in a separate location. And again, it's all automatic without handballing the data.
Yeah, we don't have that data just because we are pulling it from our website, and our website only gets the data when there is a release. I do think though that could be a useful feature, but we need to make sure that it's not possible to do that from the user interface. Like you need to have some kind of command line access to like enable a setting or something, because if you, maybe not command line access, but access to the files, because if you install some module and your entire website's broken and the only way you have to access that website is through your user interface, you're going to be completely hosed. But if we put some setting somewhere that's like, oh, go into your settings.php file and turn on enable, and then at least we know people have access to turn that on in order to get the button to break their site, I think that would be a reasonable protection to be able to add the user interface to the site, as long as we require that they can get out of that mess. But yeah.
Can I interrupt this discussion, because I wanted to focus on this idea of this week, which we've only got about 5 minutes left. to talk about if we're going to do, and it's after today's meeting, it's almost too late to do this in November. We got to kind of make a decision today if we have the energy. So I think Steve's got a great idea, and we'll talk more about that. Go ahead.
Just to mention this quickly, just as a compromise. So the point that Steve is making is that GitLab is avoided by people with less technical knowledge, but they go to the main site to search for things. And our concern is that we don't want to expose dev releases in the project installer and break people's sites. The compromise could be that the project installer pulls only things from b.org that have releases, but b.org lists everything that's on GitHub. So people can use b.org to search for things that are not released yet. They don't have releases, but they cannot actually install them.
On this Drupal upgrade week. Go ahead, Irina.
Hi, I apologize. I have to leave around 2.
Okay.
I have a quick question about the job board, and I wanted
Sure.
to mention that it feels more like a technical meeting than an outreach meeting. Sorry to be very direct.
I didn't hear that. Can you repeat it?
Let's talk about job board.
No, but what was your comment about the job board?
I just wanted to say thank you very much. I think that if you can open a forum with that is called job board, that would be a great start. And I can mention it in whatever outreach. When I'm talking about what our group is doing with Backdrop, I will be able to say that there is a place where where developers, both developers and agencies, can exchange job postings. And this is not the place where people negotiate rates. This is a place where you just put an ad. You just say, hey, I'm looking for help. This is project that I need to migrate. And that would be a huge step if we can have a job board.
Yeah, so Irina, I went ahead and opened the forum already this morning, and I've already tweeted about it. So there is a section on the forum. And again, for anybody who's not followed this discussion, this could just be temporary. We can do something better later, but this was something we could do pretty quickly. And frankly, I think it might go a long ways toward meeting the need. So if you have comments on the specific wording or how I've set it up, let me know.
This is terrific. I am very happy to see that, and I can include it in any of my presentations that are related to Backdrop.
Excellent.
Thanks.
And Irina, so you're going to be at some events this week talking about that, and you might be the kind of person we need advice on how do we do a better job of supporting folks when they go to other events so they can talk about Backdrop. So maybe, if not right now, in the future, give us feedback like on what more we can do to support you when you're out at events talking about Backdrop. Oh, you're muted.
Thank you. Yeah, I think that is a good plan to have clear explanation of what Backdrop is, what are the benefits of using it versus, for example, moving to WordPress, which is the biggest discussion that's happening for people who are moving to Drupal 7, Drupal 7 this coming year. Yeah, let's connect and talk about it.
Sure.
You're muted, Tim.
Yeah, thank you. I'm hearing, in terms of upgrade week, I'm hearing lots of people saying great idea, but I'm not getting the sort of energy and ideas that I think we need to make it successful. And we don't have much time if we want. I mean, we could do something like this later. So it's not like we can only do it now, but I do think there's something special about November in terms of leveraging it for publicity. And so what I'm looking for, if we want to proceed with this, is a little bit, clear commitment from folks like, yeah, I can be there to do a session, or even better, like some new ideas. I wanted to get the discussion going. Go ahead, Jen.
I was just going to say that I think that we should schedule something and put it on the calendar as a sprint, and just so we can get it and start promoting it, and we can figure out what's going to actually happen at that. Like, we don't have to know that now, as long as we can get people to commit to that date. I'm just checking my calendar to see what date it is. November 2nd. is,
I get the notion, but maybe sprint is not the word to describe it, but maybe
Right.
just like workshops, like upgrade workshops. Just come like the idea of or the office hours thing that we had, like come with your site and we'll help you get maybe not migrated right then and there, but upgraded, but help you get started or get, I don't know, 80% there or whatever.
Well, I have been talking about upgrade week. Maybe it's upgrade day. Maybe we scale down a bit and it's just a day event. And then if something happens between now and then and it gets expanded, great, but maybe we start small with upgrade day. So should that be on a weekend or should it be during the week? I kind of feel like it maybe, usually we do stuff like this on a weekend, but I'm wondering if we don't want to hit the people who, are more professional about their Drupal and, aren't going to do it on a weekend. So we pick a Wednesday or something.
well, Drupal end of life is on Tuesday the 2nd, Drupal 8 end of life. So
Right.
if we wanted to leverage that, we could do it on end of life day. And it
Oh,
would be,
wow.
I mean, from PR perspective, I'm not sure from a logistic perspective, but I think that could happen.
Sure. Well,
Coronation
yeah.
Day or something like that. Yeah.
Or
Start
we
of
could do the
life
day
day.
after too, that would also be fine, just like, it's dead, let's see what else.
Right. So which day is official end of life?
November
Tuesday?
2nd,
November 2nd. Okay.
yeah, so it's like next Tuesday, it's like right
Right.
around the
I
corner.
agree that would be like the maximum leverage day, although it only if we have time to leverage it, right? Only if we have time to spread the word, which that is awfully short, but it could happen. I mean, we'd have to be pretty limited in scope and what we tried to do. Is it possible? Could we do something on next Tuesday or Wednesday? Do you have?
I would be happy to contribute time next Tuesday or Wednesday. Wednesday's actually better for me, but Tuesday afternoon's better and Wednesday morning's better, but both days would work for me. I think also like we could get, what did you call it, Greg? An upgrade workshop or something like that. I think a workshop is a good place to start. And depending on how that goes, we could also then say, okay, well, let's schedule a week like in the late November or whatever, if we need more time and we want to do more things and we can get more organized about it. But I would love to do something on end of life, like whatever that Tuesday, Wednesday option is.
And next year we'll call it D7 start of life.
I think we can pull something limited together pretty quickly. I would vote for doing it Wednesday, just to give us one more day. And also, I think it's totally legit to say the day after. We could be promoting it on end of life day.
Yeah.
Tomorrow, come to our session. And here's what I would do: is have it in our Zoom room with breakout rooms where we have a couple of demos, sort of structured demos planned, and then another just help room, and really promote it as here's your day to come and just, to either access some organize, some actual like structured presentations, or to just ask questions, and that we try to make sure that we have people, and I don't know, like be there for at least say 6 hours. So we could say over the course of 6 hours, there's going to be volunteers available all day, to answer questions and to help you.
Can I ask something like, Jen, I know that you have access to the calendar to add events. If you do add an event for that day, can you, like if it's 6 hour slots, instead of doing whole day events, can you do specific, like multiple 6 hour? Because it helps me on my calendar to coordinate with what I need to do with work, right? And how that fits in. Thanks, that would help.
So I put it in as 9 to 5, but we don't have to commit to 9 to 5. That's 9 to 5 Pacific. So if, there are people who want to work 9 to 12 Eastern, that's also fine. So I don't know, Greg.
Well, I would say we break it into 3 or 4 hour shifts for some people that want to do 3 or 4 hours. And then if we want, they want to stay all day, they can. So can we do that Wednesday?
Yeah.
Okay.
I'm definitely available from 9 to 1 on Wednesday, and I'd be happy to take that shift.
It's important that we have at least somebody there all day that has done back upgrades before. Like, I don't want to be the only one there at the end of the day, they're completely unable to answer people's questions. So we should only have it open as long as we know we're going to have people there that actually can answer people's questions. So we should get a quick, is there anybody else here that's available that day and feels like you could answer upgrade questions?
I can go till 2, but I have a doctor's appointment after that.
Okay. Well, we can bring it up and get the dev meeting and in Zulip, see if we can recruit somebody for later in the day, or we could officially cancel it, Jen, when you're no longer available, and then just keep it open as long if somebody shows up.
Okay.
Okay. I think we should wrap up this meeting. One more plea for if anybody not plea, but request, if anybody wants to, is willing to help take over the newsletter for Peter, that would be great. Contact us. And if you want to just ask more about what's involved, contact Peter or myself. I've done it as well myself. So, yeah, let's talk a little bit more about this or seek volunteers at the next meeting. I'll start pinging people in Zulip and see if anybody could help later in the day. And if people have other ideas of things we can do quickly in conjunction with that day, or have ideas about how to promote it, then please let us know. Okay, let's end the meeting.